So now let's hear from OECD, Mr. Rolf about your recent actions.
Thank you very much, Kenzo. When you listen to those very, very important contributions already now, you, I think, very fast come to the conclusion that when you link water and disaster, you cannot say, but we need to be taking a very integrated approach, a very comprehensive approach, Madam Minister. You said it very clearly. We can't look at it in an isolated, in a sectoral way. And let me say we have, over the last 3 days here in this fantastic forum, heard a lot about water management, water governance. I have to say, I'm saying that perhaps with a bit of a view from an OECD perspective. The OECD, as you know, 34 countries, industrialized countries, that try to coordinate their policies in a organization which is, has been built actually on what was called the Marshall Plan for Europe at the time. Governance means that we really think we cannot just deal with water, but the water management has to include a component that says how to deal with disasters. So there is a first link that I would make in terms of integration. But there is another link that I would like to point to, and that is that we speak about water disasters, but typically, or in many cases, as we just heard, this is not an isolated event. Typically, water comes with something else, or it provokes something else. So therefore, I would say integration means also to find the right approach of risk management of governments. And perhaps contrary to the belief of many, and I have to include myself in that, when you look at the state of affairs of risk management, even among our OECD countries, which are presumably often considered to be leading, there's much to do, actually, a lot to do. We have had very much, we had cooperated, and we are cooperating a lot with Japan. Of course, it's our large country in the OECD. It's an important country. And these last events have shown that, and I tell you a typical reaction that people made in these comments when we speak about it. If Japan cannot master such an event, who can? And I think it testifies on the one hand to your incredible capacities, but also it testifies to the dimension of disaster that you can, by nature, not anticipate entirely. I would like to say that we did perhaps what you were just saying, Michel, should not happen. You said maybe we should anticipate more than react. But I must say that at the same time, crisis, disaster is galvanizing. And I believe that one of the reasons behind the fact that here in the OECD we created last year a risk forum. What is it? A risk forum, you could say, well, it's one or another of those ones, where people come together and talk. Well, I would say, yes, that's true, but it's also amazing when you see what the response to that forum was. A lot of countries sent people, sent ideas, sent a few resources to say, please get us going. But what we tried to do is not to link it just to governments. And I would underline governments, not just central government, but it's the regional, it's the local dimension that you have integrated. Otherwise, it doesn't work. We also asked the private sector to be part of this story. And why the private sector? Because, well, because first of all, the private sector in many ways owns a lot of the infrastructure that is at risk. The private sector can actually take care of some of it themselves. But also because the private sector, of course, has an interest to understand what governments want to do, how do they prepare for disaster. And on the other hand, I think it is essential, and Japan's example of last year, tragic example, has shown it so clearly, cooperation has to be between the private sector and the public sector, otherwise it will be incomplete. And I'd like to make two comments. Madam, you made the comment on communications. It was, well, I mean, it was really, I couldn't say otherwise, but it was impressive actually to see that in the Japanese management emerged a few of those issues of the credibility of information. The credibility of information. And why is credibility so important? Because in a crisis situation, people have to rely on the information and you expect them to act. So you have to make sure that this communication is absolutely correct and credible. Once you play with it, it's gone, and there is all your influence of people, of their behavior gone. And that's a very risky situation. But that can also come when, for example, private sector and public sector are not well coordinated, neither in the quality nor in the timing of information. We therefore would like to, and have been now charged by our countries, to develop a set of those very clear principles for risk management. And I think there are questions of the right assessment, which isn't so easy, but we can learn from the past. There is a very great emphasis to be put on this coordination between different stakeholders. I spoke about the private sector, but I don't mean only the private sector. And there is thirdly, something that was mentioned just this afternoon by Monsieur Fauchon, an honest evaluation of what has happened. Because only an honest and very transparent evaluation can inform the future policies clearly. So I would say we have a lot of things to do. We have responded. We would like to contribute to your work here very precisely. And I would just like to say yesterday, where the OECD has its headquarters in Paris, yesterday the Japanese ambassador invited the member countries to commemorate the 11th of March 2011. And I think it was, you know, at least for us here, for me at least, when you see the pictures, it's somehow unbelievable that it happened. But one thing he said, when you believe in the energy that nature put and let loose at that moment, in those very few moments, the energy of a 500 by 200 kilometers wave of water hitting a country, I think one has to really digest that figure and that type of approach and type of attack, I would say, to make also clear what kind of a challenge we have in saying we would like to master that sort of an event. So I think, with all due respect to all the goodwill and all the good dreams, but at the same time, I think we have to have also a certain degree of humbleness about what can be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Altas. You said that you have created a risk forum, which is a very significant platform in amassing a lot of information and experiences which already have happened in many parts of the world. And now that is very important for us to even make a credible information, how to build credible information in the future. So thank you very, very much for that.